Good morning, and welcome to the Lone Star Weekly Business Hour. Your host, Rick Schissler, is a Silver Fox advisor who personally has over 40 years of experience as a serial entrepreneur. So sit back, pull out your pad and pencil, and get ready to take notes as we join Rick Schissler in his Lone Star Weekly Business Hour.
And welcome to the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor. This week we have a very interesting show, I think you'll find. I want to get started right away, though, because we've got a really special guest in the studio, and I want to leave ample time to visit with him about his business. And the first thing I want to do is open up with a big thank you to Lenora Purvis and Heaven's Resource Army for making Lone Star part of their first annual crawfish boil fundraiser. Dick was over with the group over in Cleveland this past weekend on Saturday at Wes Anderson Ford. They had a great turnout over there. I read last night that Lenore says they raised over $8,500 as part of the activity over there. So if you missed it, you missed a good chance to bring the family out. Lots of activity. But keep an eye out on our Facebook page in the future and look for the activities. Lone Star does a lot of events, a lot of nonprofit events here in the Montgomery County area. Always time, especially in the spring of the year, to take your family out or yourself and a friend and have some good times in some of the communities around the greater Montgomery area. So moving right along to business news and tips you can use. The first piece of news that I want to share with you, and it's starting to appear almost every day, and that's kind of a signal to me that something's going to happen. You know, the Federal Reserve, which is really quite removed from most of us in small business world, but, you know, they're kind of at the top of the heap when it comes to money and the cost of money. The cost of our loans, credit cards, and whatnot that we depend on in our business. But they're at the very top, and eventually whatever they do and the decisions they make trickle down to us. And the Fed had a meeting last week. Some of the results of that meeting, there's a general impression, I believe, in the business community, in the worldwide business community, that interest rates are going to start moving up here soon. And it's being talked about every day in the news. So that's kind of an indicator to me that something's going to happen. I wouldn't worry about it today or next week or even next month, but I definitely feel in the next 6 months, maybe 12 at the longest, we're going to see interest rates start working their way up, which that means is if you have a loan at the bank, if you have a credit card loan, whatnot, you're going to potentially see your interest rate and cost of being in business creep up a little bit. So keep an eye on that. A little tip I'd like to pass on to you. And this is something that many businesses forget to do or never do. And I'm speaking to everyone in business with this, even if you're in business for yourself and you carry any kind of business insurance. And I think business insurance, once you reach a certain size, it's a must-have. I personally believe having some kind of business insurance, even when you first start out, and you work out of your home, even a home office. If you check your homeowner's policies, a lot of times they won't cover your business equipment and other material that you have in that home office, so that if your home is struck by some kind of natural disaster or fire, you would not be covered for the loss of those items. And if you look around your business equipment, materials, your files, records and whatnot, it adds up. It adds up, particularly the longer you're in business. So I think the point I'm trying to make is I think it's important to do an annual audit or check on your business. And if you're really blessed enough to have a good insurance agent, it's that much easier. And I know we had Ava Shirley of ARB Insurance on this program earlier in the year, and we talked a little bit about checking your business insurance to make sure that you had the proper coverage. A lot of folks focus on the idea, do I have enough? Well, you also need the proper coverage. And believe it or not, as your business grows, it changes. And a lot of times, you're not necessarily selling the same product or providing the same services. Obviously, if your business is growing and you have employees, the number of employees grows. If you add vehicles or some kind of equipment, there's a change. So sometimes you need not only additional coverage, not only additional amounts of coverage, but different kinds of coverage. And I have a little checklist, 4 main items that I look at personally when I was in business, when I annually reviewed my insurance coverage as well as other things to do with insurance. The first thing, and I feel the most important, is meet with your agent at least 60 days prior to the renewal of your coverage. This is not something you want to do in a hurry. You don't want to be rushed about it. Now, you can have the meeting over the phone if you have a schedule where you just don't want to sit down and take the time, but I encourage it not to be a rushed situation. Your agent needs to understand your business. They have to understand what you're doing, not only what you sell every day, but what's going on. Do you have growth in your business? Do you have the changes I discussed earlier, like new equipment? Are you doing something different? You need to discuss your business plan, if you will, not only for what you've done in the past, but what you plan to do in the next year, at least before the next time you sit down, to be sure you do have the right coverages. The second thing is, when you sit down with them, as I've said, talk about any changes that have taken place. And this covers employees, products, services, locations, and one that's often missed is the sales process. How are you selling your products and services? Is it being done differently? Many times a business starts out and the owner of the business is the chief salesperson along with other things, but then you add a salesperson and that salesperson becomes mobile. They're out making calls or out talking to people. Do you have coverage on their vehicle? Maybe they're using their own vehicle. Is that vehicle covered when they're in business use and they're out making business calls for you? Small questions, but they can have a big impact, because if that vehicle is involved in an accident, people are hurt. Is your liability coverage going to step in and take care of coverage? Because you and I both know that if your salesperson's at fault, then whoever is representing the other side, and I'm not necessarily talking about an attorney, but the other side on insurance coverage, the insurance company representing the other person is going to look to your coverage to cover the cost of putting their client back to where they were prior to the accident. The third thing is liability coverage, and it's kind of takes off on that. Make sure it covers your obligations at a minimum. And when I speak about obligations, I'm talking about obligations you have, say, to a bank, if you have a loan against your equipment and building and whatnot, if you have a relationship, and there are other types of relationships that can be out there, is that if you get sued and someone takes your business, and that's a worst case scenario, but it happens. In certain situations we can't even think about sometimes. It just happens. Make sure your liability insurance will at least cover where you can pay those obligations, because typically, particularly in small business, we've personally guaranteed those obligations. And we've got to make sure that if the worst case scenario ever did pay us a visit, that we would be able to pay off those loans and other obligations and not personally be harmed, other than losing the business, which is a lot of harm, but at least we walk away clean. And the other thing is, be sure you increase that coverage. Our businesses grow. If your business is successful and growing, then the dollar value of your business is growing. And this definitely means that you need to increase the amount of coverage you have, particularly with the liability insurance itself. And the next thing, and the fourth thing I'd like to talk about, is your building and contents. How much are they really worth? What would it cost for you to replace them? And the scenarios here, it could be a fire, a natural disaster where you were forced to come back in and repair or replace the building or the contents of the building. It's kind of like the scenario I first talked about, in that you have a home office and the home office is destroyed and you've got to replace your computer, you've got to replace a printer, you've got the only difference really is you have a lot more items and typically a lot more money involved. And in some cases, and everyone seems to shy away from this, it's not a bad idea from time to time, if you're not called on by the bank to do so, is to have your value of your contents, particular if you have special equipment that you work with, have it appraised. It costs money, it takes some time, but keeping that appraisal current. I'm not necessarily suggesting you have to do it every year, but I think it's a good idea and one that people really overlook. They just hate the expense, they hate the time, but gosh, it's a good thing to know what your business is worth. And it's a really good thing to keep the right amount of insurance and the proper coverage on that value of your business and the equipment that you use every day. Don't let a disaster strike you and put you out of business. The last thing I have, and this is something I'm going to carry over for the next few weeks, I was reading an article. It was written by Jeff Hayden, and it was the 8 business principles that last a lifetime. And I found these quite interesting. I think there's something that everybody can use. And I'm going to kind of go down this list, just taking one at a time each week. And the first one that he suggests is focus on collecting knowledge as you build your business. It's interesting, as we get out in the world and we get busy and we start doing what we do with our widget or our service, we lose track. But we need to always be collecting knowledge, that enriches us. If we have employees, we want them to be increasing their knowledge about the business. But we need to be looking at other products, other businesses. The bottom line, Jeff says, is at the end, smart people are the ones who win. And you want to be smart. You don't want to stop learning. So it's important. So continually strive to gain more experience, more knowledge. And next week, we'll talk about the best way to do that. So that's this week's news and tips. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with our guest, Chad Patterson, who's the Executive Director of the Montgomery County Emergency Assistance, and we're going to talk about the business side of running a nonprofit. So stay with us, and we'll be right back with you. Thanks.
Tune in at 3 o'clock every Wednesday for Aperture and Shutter Speed with me, Tom Moore of TR Moore Photos.
And me, Dick.
If you are an amateur or expert, or if you haven't ever picked up an SLR camera before, Aperture and Shutter Speed is a show for anyone who loves photography and film.
Join the conversation with us by calling in or emailing us your questions. If you want to know what's coming up on Aperture and Shutter Speed, just look up our show page on irlonestar.com or look us up on Facebook.
Join us every Wednesday at 3 p.m. for Aperture and Shutter Speed, and remember,
take your lens cap off.
SPCA PetSnap of Montgomery County is a 501c3 all-volunteer-based rescue and adoption organization with a no-kill policy for healthy and adoptable animals. Our goals are fourfold: to rescue and rehabilitate homeless animals, to provide a safe haven for the animals until a suitable adoption or foster care home is found or until they are reunited with their owner, to educate the public about the great need to reduce pet population, which includes the importance of having their pets spayed and neutered, and to further the cause for humane and responsible pet ownership, and to provide a low-cost spay-neuter clinic for people who are unable to afford to spay or neuter their pets otherwise. SPCA PetSnap of Montgomery County encourages you to think adoption first. You can contact us at www.spcaofmc.com.
Welcome back. This is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor, and we're here on the weekly business hour. And as I mentioned before the break, our special guest with us today is Chad Patterson, who is the Executive Director of the Montgomery County Emergency Assistance. Boy, that's a mouthful. I guess that's why we call it the MCEA.
That's right. We love those in acronyms.
Well, welcome to the show, Chad. Glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Rick. It's a pleasure.
Well, let's start off and let you give us a little bit of background on the business, if you will. Tell us what MCEA is.
Thanks. Montgomery County Emergency Assistance was created in 1981, I believe, with the primary focus of helping people within Montgomery County face times of temporary crisis. So that could be a financial catastrophe, catastrophe with their home, say it burns down. So they've been doing that work for over 30 years, and we continue that work today. So we do everything from helping people in that crisis find temporary housing. We help them with food and clothing. We have a resale shop and an odds and ends shop where we can actually voucher needed goods during that time of crisis. We help with utility assistance. So the history has been more of a temporary crisis to fill the gap, which we will continue to do that. But I'm excited to tell you that we're also trying to go to that next level in our business plan of helping people not only get on their feet, but stay on their feet. So hopefully we can talk about that a little bit more too.
Absolutely. I'd like to do that. Well, about how many employees do you currently have?
We have 12 employees. We're a 365, 24/7 operation, kind of. We're Monday through Friday, but as we all know, the needs in the county don't ever stop. So we're trying to position ourselves with those 12 employees to meet that about 12 to 1,500 clients a month demand. And like a lot of other great nonprofits and churches and agencies in the county, the need's not going away. So we're just trying to do our part best we can.
Now, do you use volunteers in your effort?
We love volunteers.
Okay.
There's such a personal side of what we do that we need people, loving on people. And so coordinating our 12 employees, we rely very heavily on volunteers to help us with anything from like answering the phone to physically helping clients go through our food pantry and fill their shopping cart, to helping man the resale shops, to help us on deliveries and pickups. We live in a very generous county, and so we get donations weekly, and so we have people come and help unload the trucks. Just some very basic labor that makes a lot of difference in people's lives.
Now, could you give me an idea of approximately how many volunteers you utilize?
Probably right now on a weekly, monthly basis, probably 25 to 30 come in and out. Sometimes that's a daily commitment that they make. Sometimes they come weekly. Sometimes it's by a project. And so on average, I would say 25 to 30. A great story, 2 weeks ago, we had 80 junior high kiddos, which fit into a very special category of volunteers, right? From the John Cooper School came and spent about 3 hours with us and literally transformed our grounds, helped us fill bags with rice and beans. And so we have projects like that where even companies come maybe for a 2 to 4 hour window and do a specific project. So it's a very nice need and a blessing for us to have those volunteers come in. We couldn't do most of what we do without them.
Well, the one thing I think that a lot of folks miss, and I've been involved in volunteerism and nonprofit as well as in the business world for all my life practically, because my parents, who I grew up in a family business, were very much involved, and it's part of life is being involved in volunteer time and whatnot. And a lot of people, though, don't realize what a complex business that is. I mean, you've got 12 employees, doesn't sound like a whole lot, but your business is a really complex business.
It is. First of all, we have about over $1.5 million budget. And so we have to take that very seriously. We have funds from grants. We have a little bit of federal money. We have churches that make donations. We have individual donations. We have events. So as those dollars come in on the business side, we want to make sure that we're using them well and managing those things well. So there's, like you said, there's definitely a business side of what we do. Not-for-profit does not eliminate the need to have a very solid business practice. And so we have a business plan that we're trying to refine. We have a long-term 5-year plan that we're refining. So as people engage with us, we can assure them that their money is going directly into caring for clients. So it's a big part of what we do.
So accountability is a very important part of your business, like should be with every business.
Absolutely. Accountability and transparency. And so those of us who do give of our time and talents, people's heart usually is the first thing that they engage in. But I think in the back of our minds, we want to know that that time and that money is being well spent. So we pride ourselves in being very transparent with how we make reports on our financials every month, not only to our board of directors, but to other agencies and other volunteers as they come in and work with us. We want to make sure they know that we have a solid foundation in place. And so that's a big piece that we're trying to refine right now.
Well, that's kind of my translation, if you will, between profit and nonprofit is, for profit, if we make a profit, then we feel some success, or revenues increase, we feel some success. But in the nonprofit, it's really utilization of that time and talent.
Absolutely.
That really defines a certain degree your success.
And frankly, Rick, the better we utilize our resources, the more lives we can impact. So that's our profit. If we can impact a life, that's the ching-ching that goes off for us every day. That we as business, as we do this MCEA business, as we steward and manage that, our ultimate goal at the end of the day is to use our resources to have the most impact on the lives that come through our doors.
Well, let me ask you this question. I've run into this with some of the nonprofits I work with, personally volunteer with. is they've seen a kind of well, I'll use the word demand, but not in a negative sense, where major donors are looking for more accountability.
Absolutely.
They're looking for statistical or, the lives impacted. They want to see some proof.
Absolutely.
That those. Are you running into that?
We are, and the legacy that's behind me, I've just hit my 100-day mark, so I definitely want to applaud everyone that served this past 30 years. But moving forward, outcomes is a huge part of what we're going to start providing to donors and other agencies. And when I say outcomes, it's not just ticking the number of widgets that we count every month. That's important. We want to keep up with the number of lives that we're touching, but we also want to try to start measuring the impact it's having on their life. That's kind of a soft number sometimes, but we're trying to figure out ways to best report that. And then in terms of accountability, it also has to do with our internal processes. We pride ourselves in having internal and external audits. We try to be very timely in how we take in and spend our monies and how we allocate those. We have a CPA that helps oversee our books every month. So we try to have those safeguards in place to make sure that we can, in our translation of profit, maximize the resources that we have. It even speaks to the credibility of our staff. We have some very hardworking, committed people there. But a lot of times, I recently just sat down with the Houston Endowment, downtown Houston, and one of the first things they asked me is, tell me about your credentials. What prove to me that you're credible. Prove to me that you have experience in what you're doing. So before we're going to invest in you, they want to see those outcomes and that accountability piece in motion before people step up to the table and invest. I think that's fair. I think in nonprofits, we should be the best in our practices as much as a business should be. So that's where I'm trying to lead and take us.
Well, and I think that's critical because like any business seeking to be the best or successful, the Houston Endowment on one hand is a very large potential donor, but you have many small donors like any nonprofit. And for me, I'll put myself as a smaller donor to see organizations like that demand. When I give dollars to those type of institutions, those nonprofits that are following those kind of standards, I've got to feel better about it.
Yeah, and even to the volunteer piece. We want, and we're trying to be very diligent about this, if you're going to commit an hour of your time, we want that to be worthwhile. So when you come, you're going to know what's expected. You're going to have like a job list, if you will. So it's not a waste in any form or fashion. We know most people are there just to serve and give of their heart, and we love that. But even still, we want that to be impactful and a blessing for the volunteer as much as it is for the client. So.
Well, you mean the old days when we would volunteer and we kind of show up and we stand around and nobody seemed to be in charge, and then finally somebody, those are kind of gone, aren't they?
Well, we don't have time to waste, frankly,
right.
and the need is so great. We feel like if we sit back for a day, there's a lot of lost impact on lives, and so we have to take advantage of every hour and every gift that a donor or volunteer brings us, or we're not being responsible with that time. So that's how we see it.
Well, on the other side, you have the lives impacted. And as you say, you measure that not only as a statistic that there's another life, another family that we helped, but the outcomes of that. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we're trying to, like a lot of other agencies and a lot of other great nonprofits, we're trying to show how people, it's kind of the teach a man to fish principle. We know Chad may show up today where he's in crisis today because he's lost his job and he's just trying to make it to the end of the day. We get that. That need and that service that we'll provide won't go away. But we also want to show Chad the next day, here's a way you can get on your feet and stay on your feet, not just for your life, but maybe the generations behind you. So we're going to bring in some great partners like Wood Forest Bank and do some basic finance and budgeting and just some educational pieces like you mentioned in the article. We have to empower our clients to have knowledge. Sometimes there are cycles that we're trying to break. And so if we can equip them and empower them, hopefully, Phyllis, the theory is they won't repeat those cycles of need. And so the outcome of that for their own life, plus the savings that will be on our county and our government, I mean, there's a financial side to helping people live responsible lives. And so we'll also do some educational pieces on tax returns. If you're blessed to have a tax return, what might be some things you can do besides go buying a new TV or a new iPod? You may want to invest that. So if we can empower people to live life and sustain their own lives, That's what we want to try to accomplish. And so that's that next level that we're trying to reach to. That's not just a check in the box. Johnny came through the door today. But yes, Johnny came through the door, and here's some ways we're helping him stay on his feet.
A real measure of success.
We hope so. And the numbers, our scoreboards might change a little bit, frankly. Instead of serving 2,000 people a month, we may serve 1,600, but we're going to be excited to say that 20 people moved from the edge of poverty to financial independence. And so I don't know exactly what that outcome is going to translate into in terms of numbers, but that's the goal that we're moving towards.
Well, that sounds fantastic to me, because changing lives, we've heard that. I've heard that for a long time. But to see those kind of outcomes and a difference, that really is a difference.
We're hopeful.
We're going to take a short break now. Hope you'll stay with us. When we come back with Chad, we're going to talk about the importance of having a board of directors and some other issues like that, as we would have in business, and talk a little bit more as well about accountability. So please stay with us, and we'll see you in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Bonita DeRosa, Animal Control Officer for the City of Willis. We invite you to tune in to Lone Star Internet Radio every first and third Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. for the Willis Hour. On the first Thursday of the month, the Willis Hour will be covering upcoming events and news about the city. Join in the conversation with your city officials and other leaders in the community. On the third, we will be doing a recap of the last City Council meeting. The mission of the City of Willis is to provide high-quality services, accountability, and professional commitment to our citizens. We pledge to provide those who live, work, and visit our city an effective government that is open and responsive to the needs and values of the community. Again, we invite you to tune in on Lone Star Internet Radio every first and third Thursday of the month at 11 for the Willis Hour.
Hey y'all, Montgomery County Emergency Assistance is presenting their first annual Don't Mess with Texas Women Concealed Handgun class on Saturday, April 12th at the Conroe Shooting Center, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's limited to 30 participants. It's just $100, with all proceeds benefiting Montgomery County Emergency Assistance. Register online at MCEA-TX.org. Bring your gun and let's have some fun. Don't Mess with Texas Women Concealed Handgun class, April 12, 2014, and all proceeds benefit Montgomery County Emergency Assistance.
Welcome back to the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor, and we're in the studio today talking with Chad Patterson, who is the Executive Director of MCEA. There, we use those initials.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, Chad, we've been talking about the business of a nonprofit as a business, and you've enlightened me on several areas, and I'd like to extend that, as I mentioned, as we left the last session, and talk a little bit about the use of a board. I mean, a lot of small businesses don't necessarily have board of directors. I always encourage people when they reach a certain size to enlist the aid of an advisory board, and really the difference is they just don't have legal powers to replace management.
Right.
But if you have a good board, a good group of advisors, call them what you want, makes a real difference in running the business.
Absolutely. I love the word advisor. I believe very strongly in having counsel and governance. I need those safeguards in my life, and so I apply that to our business. Our structure is I do report directly to a board of directors. We have 14 board of directors, 2 advisory board members. We're very fortunate to have a great mixture of people. All of them love our mission. They love to serve people, but all of them bring a very gifted set of skill sets from the corporate arena, most of them. And so it gives us a lot of solid conversations around the business practices that we have to have, not just finances, but in resourcing, marketing development, HR, all those things that it takes to run a group of people working together, which we call an organization. And so we're very blessed to have that governance and oversight and support.
One thing that a lot of people might not understand, and I'm assuming it's the case with you, is that the board of directors of a nonprofit is also responsible for accountability.
They are. I mean, they have responsibility for the business, and they sign up for that when they join. And so, like I referred earlier, we have monthly meetings. We have specific executive committees that oversee our work. We have a finance committee. We have a resource and development committee. So we are constantly in conversation and disclosure to those people who have oversight of what we do. I find freedom in that. I find freedom in knowing that I have people that are governing and overseeing and supporting our effort. So I like that structure, and so it works well for our organization.
Well, it sounds like you're telling me you don't mind to be challenged by people.
Absolutely not. I feel like that's our job as leaders, and so I want to receive that as much as I give that. And we have a very passionate board, and we have some very aggressive goals for the next 5 years in terms of how we're going to better serve and impact Montgomery County. So the vision and the charge that comes from that, it stirs our passion and it drives our passion. And so it provides me direction to instill and to guide our own staff into. So it's a very seamless flow of vision and passion that I love being a part of.
You know, one thing we haven't kind of switched gears here, we haven't touched on is who you are and what your career has been. And we probably have some listeners out there that say, well, gosh, I've never really thought about a career in nonprofits. Tell us a little bit about your career.
Okay, thanks you. Well, I grew up here in Montgomery County. I'm a third generation Montgomery County person. I don't know the official title for that. I graduated from Conroe High School. I was blessed. I played baseball. And so learned a lot about discipline in life as an athlete. I graduated from Baylor University with a marketing management degree. Went on to get my master's in counseling from Sam Houston State. My first job was with Conroe ISD. I was a special education teacher. And so schools are nonprofits. Learned a lot about just organizational skills. I was promoted to a director over a couple of programs. And so even within a school system, you have to learn budgeting. You have to learn allocating resources. And so you have to learn customer service. And so I'm very grateful for that. From there, I went to be the executive director of a camp and conference center in the Hill Country part of Buckner International Ministries. And I think it was there, Rick, that I learned that nonprofits and ministries, if you will, while they have the face of a heart, they have a business principle behind them that sustains them. You know, if we don't operate with like a business, we'll go out of business. And so I learned a lot from Buckner in terms of management and resource development and accountability, and I'm very grateful for that. And so from there, I went on to be a director of a children's home. The face of that, obviously, is help hurting kids. But if I don't manage our resources and our personnel and our facilities, we can't serve those kids. And so that background, I hopefully have brought that with me here to where the face of what we do is definitely helping people in need. But we have to have our ducks in a row, no pun intended, for the duck race coming up in July. If we don't have our organizational pieces lined up, and if we don't pour into practices that help our employees be successful, our service to the clients will not be where it needs to be. And so that excellence is what we're going for here. And I'm thankful to be back home. I love to lead and serve, and being right in the middle of a great organization is just an incredible blessing for me.
If someone was interested in a career, and I mean, you've had a wonderful, in my opinion, background to do what you're doing. If someone was listening and they were interested in a career working towards, in the nonprofit area, what would be some of your advice to them?
Yeah, we are blessed in Montgomery County to have a tremendous amount of nonprofit agencies. We have a very strong United Way. They're a great resource of all the agencies in Montgomery County. So I would definitely encourage you to visit their website, the Montgomery County United Way. And we have other agencies and churches that I'm guessing we are looking for interns. Sometimes I would encourage people to go maybe taste it and see it and be there in it a little bit. It's very much like other organizations in terms of operational pieces, but I think sometimes the heart of it is not exactly what you think it is until you get there. So I think going there personally and maybe volunteering or asking to serve as an intern and just really getting that inside perspective would probably be wise. But I think at the end of the day, most nonprofits are about helping people and meeting needs. So if you love people, if you can accept some direction and some boundaries and guidance, I would encourage you to maybe just explore on the internet what missions are. I've found in my own life that if I'm not connected to the mission, I'm probably not going to be all in. And so I think once you identify those agencies that seem to strike that chord of your gifts and your talents and your passion, I would just call them and go interview them and go maybe observe and be a part of what they're doing. And then from there, who knows what will take off. But that's maybe the steps I would encourage someone to take.
Well, I think that's some sound advice. And with that, let me ask you, I mean, you obviously, from listening to you today, you're running a business. And again, it's always been my belief nonprofit is just like any other business. And one of the things in business is we have challenges every day. What is the biggest day in and day out, the biggest daily challenge you find in your life running the MCEA?
Wow. Well, that's a great question. And again, I know there are a lot of other people in the trench of helping people in need. I think the biggest challenge is to try to meet the high demand of need with the amount of resources that we have. I don't mean to whine or make excuses, but we have to create systems and organizations that can be efficient in meeting the increasing need in Montgomery County. Obviously, we could use more staff. We could use more money. I think those things will come the better we line ourselves up and operate more effectively, the more we collaborate with other agencies. But I think to answer your question, the biggest need, the biggest challenge is just trying to meet the need with the people and the resources that we have. Most of our people in nonprofits around the county, I would say, are very selfless. But at the same time, we need to take care of our staff and employees so they don't burn out and crash. And so I think that's a challenge for nonprofits, to pour into their people and keep developing their people, not just in salaries, but just in those benefits and that time off and those basic necessities that people need to stay whole and healthy and strong. I think that's a challenge that we face. Obviously, we're trying to diversify our funding streams, and we're in the middle of grant season. And so the more we can diversify and better have a variety in our portfolio, if you will, the stronger we'll be as an agency and the more lives we can impact. But that's a challenge. It takes time to apply for grants. And usually that's a hat that someone else is wearing with 3 other hats. So again, just trying to be missional and trying to be focused and trying to be efficient will allow us to grow and expand and meet that increased need. So,
well, you know, that's one thing I think people miss again in nonprofits is your revenue being grants. I mean, you touched on there, and I know a little bit personally about grant writing and some of the challenges that are involved. But as a nonprofit, you're always out looking for revenue, just like a business.
You are.
But I believe personally that it's more difficult for the nonprofit than perhaps the business where I have a product or service that I can market and sell. I mean, it's really different looking for revenue.
It is. And one of the things that just came to mind, Rick, is that the nonprofit work is a very passionate, I hate to say emotional, but it strikes the chords of people's heart. And people want to have their own thumbprint on what they're doing. And this is a challenge to MCEA and to all of us in the nonprofit world. We have to work better together. There's a lot of duplication of services, if you will. And I think sometimes, and I know there's a stronger effort for us to collaborate, and I applaud that. And I think that will strengthen all of us together. You know, I think sometimes we get kind of turfy, that this is my turf and this is what I do. And sometimes I think we should break those walls down. And as we work more collaboratively and collectively, I think we'll be stronger. Not each agency will be stronger, and our work will be stronger together. And there's a real shift and movement on that. There's a very sometimes that's required in the grants, that you have to show the partnerships that you've established. I think that's wise, because I think that's a better utilization of monies to have greater impact instead of just watering things down and duplicating services. There's a very strong alliance building going on within Montgomery County and the nonprofits for us to collaborate more, even with business partners. So I think that's a strategy moving forward that's going to produce a lot of great results.
Well, and it's interesting to me if I can take that and just kind of turn that around to a business. A lot of times businesses, and many of them are blind in my opinion, clients that I've worked with, that there are partnerships out there and strategic relationships. And the small businesses particularly, but even larger business, and I'm talking, you know, getting up close to the Fortune 1000. A lot of times leadership doesn't see the value or wants to keep everything to themselves. And obviously those partnerships and the ability to connect with other people As I said in my introduction, we've got to be smarter.
Yeah, and that's happening here. I've been very blessed. We have some great partners, and I could go down the list. And people are coming together, and I think there's strength in that, and I see that transforming in front of our eyes here in Montgomery County.
One of the things that is important for every business to do, in my opinion, and some people claim I kind of harp on it a lot, but that's planning. Share with us some of the, just quickly, not great detail, but some of the planning you go through in running your business.
Sure. Now, sometimes the plan is just to make it through the day, right, or through the hour.
Hear that.
And that's part of what we do in basic needs, providing basic needs. We sometimes live in crisis, but what we have to remind ourselves is the tyranny of the urgent. We have to step out of that at times and make sure we have a plan. So we have a 5-year plan. We have an operational plan that we're developing for the year to set goals and targets and priorities. I meet weekly and monthly with our teams as a whole and in individual units, where we're constantly focusing on our priorities and that we're making our decisions on a daily, hourly basis based on our priorities. And that guides us through those times of crisis and chaos and being tired. And so planning is a huge part of what we do. I see my role as an executive director to hopefully rise out of that chaos at times. Obviously, I roll my sleeves up and dive in and get in the trench too. But as a leader, as an organizational leader, I think for nonprofits, we have to have strategy. We have to be intentional. We can't just have a shotgun approach and hope we hit something. But so our board goes through visioning plans. We have a 5-year planning piece that we're working on. So I would encourage all the nonprofits, and I think most of us do, have that time that's set aside that we look ahead, that we're not just looking at the ground in front of us, but we take the time to step back and breathe and exhale and think about how we're going to get to the next mark down the road. So planning is an ongoing part of what we have to do.
Well, I want all my business listeners out there to hear that, because that's right on target. And I seem to harp or preach on it, but planning is so crucial to the ultimate success or the ultimate goal of what you're trying to do in business. And it sounds like you've got your arms around that real well. We're going to take a short break here, ladies and gentlemen, and then come back with our final bit here with Chad and talk a little bit more in detail about the mission of MCEA and talk about what they're really doing in the community. So please stay with us, and we'll be right back with you.
Have you ever wandered around a parking lot trying to look like you actually know where you parked? Then you'll love the Mark and Cindy Show. If buying toilet paper with aloe vera is the most exciting thing you're going to do today, then you'll love the Mark and Cindy Show. Even if you haven't tweeted, you'll still love the Mark and Cindy Show.
How about twerking?
Ew, that was one step over the line, Mark.
Well, you said toilet paper.
Look, we want listeners to tune in to the Mark and Cindy Show at 10 o'clock every weekday morning here on Lone Star Internet Radio.
The Mark and Cindy Show, it's like visiting with your best friends for coffee, except we will never stiff you with a check.
And one of us always knows what she's talking about.
Well, okay, but it's still called the Mark and Cindy Show. You know that.
We'll see. The Mark and Cindy Show. Tune in to Lone Star Radio every weekday morning at 10 o'clock.
Did you know there are over 800 abused children in foster care in Montgomery County? Will you help make a difference? I'm Susan, a volunteer with CASA Child Advocates of Montgomery County. April is Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. CASA Child Advocates trains and supports volunteers to be the voice of children who have been removed from their home because of abuse or neglect. We need volunteers just like you to speak up for these children. To learn more about becoming an advocate, please visit CASASpeaksForKids.com or call 936-441-5437.
Hi, I'm Joyce with the Corner Pub in downtown Conroe. We're located at the corner of Simonton and North Main, just across the street from the courthouse. The week starts off Monday with open mic hosted by Alan, and Tuesday nights open mic hosted by Jeremy Bankhead. And on Thursday evening, McFarland Jams. There's nightly drink specials available every night, all night. And don't forget, live entertainment every weekend. To see a full list of events, visit our website at thecornerpubinconroe.com. So come join us at the Corner Pub, where the deli is open late.
Welcome back. This is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor, and you're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. We've had a great conversation this morning with Chad Patterson, the Executive Director of Montgomery County Emergency Assistance, MCEA. And Chad, you've talked to us a lot about how running a nonprofit is really like a business, a for-profit business, which is one of the things I really want to convey to our listeners, that nonprofit and for-profit businesses are very similar. But I'd like to finish up our visit this morning and let you talk in detail, if you'd like. You mentioned a lot of things along the way about what MCEA is and all the great things they do in Montgomery County, and any kind of help particularly they might use. Kind of turn it over to you. So talk to us a little bit.
Well, first of all, this has been a pleasure. Thank you, Rick, for this opportunity. Our main mission is to help people in crisis and need. So we average about 1,200 to 1,500 people a month. And so that's the heart of what we do. In the face of that may be someone walking in that needs utility assistance. We're blessed to have companies like Entergy that help us with that, and TXU and others. Or someone may need rental assistance. And so the face of what we greet is sometimes different, but it's literally someone in need. We have mechanisms in place to hopefully help them immediately. So we have a food pantry at our location, which is at 1022 McCall, right there behind the CVS pharmacy. Please feel free to come by anytime. I'd love to give you a tour. We have a food pantry. We have an odds and ends resale shop to where we can help Chad with clothes if he needs it, or with furniture. Let's say he has a disaster in his house. We can give him some odds and ends, pots and pans, dishes, whatever, to help him through this temporary crisis. And so that's what we do day to day. To help us do that, like we've mentioned earlier, we have volunteers that come. We have a unique resale boutique shop, which is over at the old Buckaloo Chevrolet on North Fraser. Like other great resale shops, please feel free to come shop at ours. It's open Tuesday through Saturday. And so we're very fortunate to have some really nice gifts that are donated, which we turn immediately around into providing to clients. At the resale shop, we sell those, and those profits go directly back into our work. We have events coming up. We have a handgun class on April the 12th. We have our annual duck race, July 4th. We have a classic car show we're a part of that Gullo's helping out at La Torreta. It's the first weekend in May, so hopefully you'll see some announcements about that. But our goal every day is to serve clients when they come through our door with everything that we can. We do have systems in place that allow us to case manage, so we do have some intentionality around how and when we help people. And so, like I talked about earlier, we're trying to move people into living life on their own 2 feet. So we track that. We don't want to cripple anybody by helping them too much and not asking them to help themselves. So we have a case manager that walks them through that process, and we hold them accountable, and we support them and meet with them as they come in and kind of track their progress. Our goal, and what we're calling the Hand Up initiative, is to really strengthen that piece so that we help Chad, again, learn how to fish and maybe even learn how to sell those fish for generations to where he can take care of his own family for the long term. So that's in a heartbeat what we do. We're all over the county like other nonprofits. We go to outer offices at all regions in the county on a weekly basis and try to see clients there instead of asking them to drive in. And so we're just trying to fill our part of the gap here in services and needs in Montgomery County like a lot of other great nonprofits are.
Well, you know, one of the things I'm impressed with is someone who's been working here. Our show's a little over a year old, but I've met a lot of wonderful business people and other people here in Montgomery County, is that folks like Margie Taylor and your staff and volunteers, you're known, you're visible, your organization. I mean, I'm impressed how well it's known as a business. It really is known throughout the county.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, we're very fortunate to have Margie. She does a great job with our external pieces and marketing development. So kudos to her for sure. We're all in development. Every time we serve a client, we're advertising our services. And so even the people that answer the phone, like Susan, who takes about 75 calls a day, I mean, those are the faces and the hands and feet of MCEA. So I'm glad that reputation is good. I hope it gets stronger, and I hope that you hear even more about the work that we're doing along with the others in the county.
Well, one thing I have to digress just a moment is, Margie got a lot of exposure for y'all with the famous duck suit. In fact, I have to tell everyone that you didn't even miss an opportunity here when we were at break to ask Dick, our general manager, if he was suiting up.
Absolutely. So. I thought I saw him nod his head.
I saw an affirmation there. I'll back you up on that.
So we're excited about that.
Always, there's a lot of ways to be visible, isn't there?
Absolutely. And again, our visibility helps us have more impact. Our goal in being visible is to connect with other people, to bring others into the fold with us in terms of trying to change lives and impact lives in the county. So it's fun a lot of days, but it's hard a lot of days. And so the payoff for what we do is amazing. It's very rewarding.
Let me talk a little bit more about your organization, because you've talked about that as people suffer some type of disaster in their life, if you will, you're at the front line. I mean, you're the frontline responder. How do you connect with people? Do they come to you, or are you made aware? I mean, I'm always amazed that you see people, the apartment burns down or things like that. How do you connect with people?
A lot of times it's word of mouth. Again, the agencies here in the county, we kind of all know our niche and what people do well. And so there's an internal mechanism of referral there, which is very strong. The clients have word of mouth and testimonies, I guess, of what happens. We're working on an initiative right now with fire chiefs to be kind of a stopgap with the Red Cross, maybe when people's homes do burn down. So we're working on a grant to do that. Churches, agencies, organizations, our board, our staff, everywhere we go, we talk about MCEA, and I think that awareness just spreads. But a lot of times people literally just show up at the door, and they may have seen it on an advertisement or mostly from other agencies. And that's how they find us. And from there, it just grows.
That's amazing that people know that. And again, from my perspective, you're very visible out there in the community, but to be able to find the organization that really can help them, I think that's always been a challenge, particularly in the nonprofit area, is connecting with the people you truly want to serve.
Right. Right, and there's efforts to do that. And again, it takes all the agencies together and churches. A lot of churches partner with nonprofits, and so the better we can communicate and collaborate, because it's frustrating even seeing it happen. We want to remove as many molds and barriers as there are that prevent people from getting the services that they need. Obviously, we have certain guidelines and boundaries that we can't go outside of. But if we can remove those barriers, so when someone is truly in need, the quicker and faster that we can get them those services, that's our goal. So we're not the 911 when people call, but we're sometimes right behind that in terms of helping and giving hope and resources to them.
If you're willing to share, you were talking about planning. We were talking about that issue. You're working on a 5-year plan. Where do you see your organization in 5 years? Is there a vision yet of what it looks like?
Yeah. Well, let me just warn
whatever
the board.
You can share.
None of this has been approved yet, right?
I understand.
I'm a dreamer. I'm teasing. I would love to see us having presence in every corner of the county, the outposts, if you will, the deserts of care, if you will, on a more regular basis. I don't know that means brick and mortar. But we're going to strategize in how we can have a stronger presence in all areas of the county. We're working on that now, but we're trying to partner with other agencies like Lenora out in East County. And we have some work going on in Willis and in Montgomery and in South County in the Woodlands, where we can have a more regular, I'd love to have a daily presence there, frankly. So that's part of the long-range plan. I think part of the long-range plan is to really develop these next-level classes and programs and case management to where Chad can come through and have a relationship with us maybe for 18 months. I mean, we may walk beside Chad for a long period of time and mentor him and hold him accountable and support him so he truly can change that cycle in his own life and be on his own. So that's going to be the first push for the next 2 to 3 years, to really establish that and establish those programs to where we can have consistency in delivering that. But I would say the big dream would be to maybe even have a greater service center someday, where we can maybe coordinate the emergency assistance needs in the county and be that face and that front door that people come through. So,
well, in light of that, let me ask you this, and I assume this goes into your planning, but I've seen or been told that the county is going to have tremendous growth. I've heard 600,000 people in the next 10 to 15 years, which will primarily be in the northern eastern part of the county, because the Woodlands is fairly well built out. Call that the southern part of the county. So a lot of people in a short period of time.
Absolutely.
What's that impact on what you? I mean, that's a lot of folks.
Yeah, and I'm a hard-headed. I'm gonna get over that hill kind of guy. I don't know that we'll totally get ahead of that curve because it's already here. But I think our job is to try to plan ahead to where we can impact that the most. So collaborating with the other agencies to make sure that we have the resources in place in every part of the county. I think that's our first priority, that we strengthen those partnerships that are already there. The resources are probably already there, but it's just a matter of coordination so we can better deliver to the needs. And in the face of crisis, it's not based on gender or race. It has all faces. So it's not isolated in certain pockets or cultures in the county. It's county-wide. So we're trying to keep our eyes open to all sorts of partnerships and collaborations in every aspect of the county to where we can deliver services to.
Well, Chad, I want to take this time to thank you very much for taking a bit out of your day to come in and talk to us, and you've definitely shown me and hopefully our listeners about the parallels and the differences in running a nonprofit versus a for-profit business. But in the end, it's all about results.
It is.
And that's what I get a sense that you folks at MCEA are delivering those results day in and day out.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
If people would like to contact you, would you give that contact information,
Absolutely.
please?
You can find us on the website at mcea-tx.org, or you can call our office directly at 936-539-1096, or come by and visit us at 1022 McCall Street, right behind the CVS in Conroe.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate that. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this week on the Weekly Business Hour. And remember to listen to or tune in this coming Saturday at 7 p.m. to hear the Players Theater Company Old Time Radio Hour. This week it'll be their latest production of The Green Hornet That Goes to Talk Too Much. So a lot of great programs on Lone Star Internet Radio, and I hope you'll check out our website at www.irlonestar.com. Always remember that Lone Star Internet Radio is Conroe and Montgomery County's community radio station where the community comes to connect. Lone Star, serving Montgomery County from the heart of Conroe. See you next week, partner.
Hey everyone, this is Tina, your host from Retro Saturdays. I wanted to invite you to visit. Hey everyone, this is Tina, your host from Retro Saturdays. I wanted to invite you to visit the Lone Star Studios here in downtown Conroe, Texas. We're all volunteers here, and we need your help in serving the Montgomery County area. Radio media is a fun field to be in. Lone Star Internet Radio serves Montgomery County with news, current events, local programming, and of course, music. If you are interested in volunteering and sharing your talents in media, go to irlonestar.com and let us hear from you. Lone Star Internet Radio, serving Montgomery County from the heart of downtown Conroe.